with sprawling garden plots, an aviary, and a half-dozen tidy enclosures housing chickens.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning to everybody. Is everybody okay? Good morning, Peter. Where's Alexis? Alexis, as class announcer, how are you?
I'm good.
Alexis, this morning, 2 minutes before I opened up Google Meets, I just thought I'd turn on the TV, you know. Who doesn't want to see what's on TV, right? Come on, please. Hello. And an American Experience, which is a major foundation, a documentary on the history of eugenics. What we were discussing, we got very lucky here. And I learned a lot because I watched the first 10 minutes of it. Interesting, right, Natalie? I'm trying to get her interested. Okay, let's stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. Too bad the dinosaurs didn't know anything about eugenics. Everybody stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Repeat after me. I'm so happy because I'm on the right track. Yes, I'm happy. There's no turning back. The purpose of this class is to cooperate, communicate, to educate. On time, on task, on target, on to college. Now, we got a lot planned today. I need to see a lot more people chime in. Attendance isn't so good right now. Before I get back to the eugenics, here, look, with the babies.
Breeders were doing in animals to the breeding of better human beings.
See, stop.
Was a natural step.
In 1909, Davenport informed his funder, the Carnegie Institution, that he'd shifted his focus from the breeding of cats and roosters to an investigation of human traits. Having already found the Mendelian ratio in early studies of eye color and hair color, and convinced he was on the right track, he now began to collect data on a wide range of other human characteristics. He sent out a family history questionnaire to hundreds of individuals and solicited prisons, hospitals, and educational institutions for their records.
You can't really do breeding experiments with human beings. Aside from the ethics, you just can't live long enough to see generations and generations. So it was Davenport's genius to realize if he could collect family pedigrees, he could trace family inheritances and try to prove that evolution.
See, I know what he's saying.
The way it works for animals.
Davenport's plan was to analyze the pedigree charts for Mendelian patterns and to identify the desirable.
That's Gregor Mendel, the founder of the
encourage careful breeding, and the undesirable ones they could breed out.
See? Breed out the undesirable ones. They just said it. It's Channel 11. It's not some radical Fox News. It's Channel 11.
Wouldn't it be a better world if we could wipe out poverty? Wouldn't it be a better world if we didn't have criminals? Wouldn't it be a better world if everyone behaved themselves? And if the reason we have poverty and crime is something that's determined by our genes, if we can change that and make it so that the people who have those bad traits don't pass them down, wouldn't that be a better world?
Among Americans of Charles Davenport's class and generation, there was perhaps no word that had more currency at the turn of the century than improvement. They had come of age in the midst of a revolution, a seismic shift that had made the United States the most prosperous and powerful nation on earth, and in the eyes of many, had simultaneously plunged it into chaos.
It's the beginning of the 20th century. We have rampant urbanization, rampant industrialization, rampant immigration. The old order is passing, and wherever you look, society seems to be deteriorating.
More and more farms were giving way to factories, and the cities were overrun with newcomers.
I'll get back to that.
Many from the countryside.
I got to put this in context because you're going to get ridiculously lost if I don't. First of all, good morning. Listen, what's happening right now is actually extremely important. I had referenced eugenics, as I always do, because I need you to know of its existence, because it has put in it has put its fingerprint on the human race. And listen, I'm not going to get too out there, but the sum total of the eugenics movement is the Holocaust. Eugenics was theorized by a scientist named Charles Davenport in the 1880s. He was actually a cousin of Charles Darwin. And he was an animal breeder. They'd breed chickens and rabbits. You know, they breed chickens. They do that today. They are genetically modifying. That's called GMO. GMO, genetically modified foods. They're trying to make the best, the biggest tomato, the best tomato. He did something, but he probably shouldn't have done. Between 1880 and 1910, he got a whole bunch of other scientists to agree with him that the best way to make an American race is to breed out the weak genes. And how they did it is they took all your ancestors, your pedigree, your genealogies. They looked at your grandmother, your great-grandmother, as far back as they could, and they would look to see if there's any illness or what they called feeble-mindedness. That's where the word moron comes from. They're going to get to that in this documentary. The word moron, the MOR in moron is moral, as somebody who cannot morally develop. All the words, listen, all the words we know to be taboo today, moron, retard, feeble-minded, those were all scientific terms during the early 1900s. At first, they thought that if they breeded a better race, then they could stop things like poverty and crime because people have superior genes. But what it led to was sterilization and tragic procedures, and it ended up to these theories that were later embraced by these wicked people that there's a superior versus an inferior gene in the hereditary pool. And if you have the superior gene, like Tom Buchanan is claiming, well, then you have all the advantages. But you have the inferior gene, let's say somebody like Mr. Wilson, the gas mechanic in Gatsby, then you get labeled. And then ultimately, in the worst case scenario, you get interned in a detention center or concentration camp. Let's see what they're saying now. Look at these guys.
Trying to parse the many varieties of feeble-mindedness.
See, feeble-mindedness.
An all too
Didn't make that
common
up.
mental deficiency associated with antisocial behavior. Some of Vineland's 300 inmates were violent or deranged.
They're working on prisoners.
Others unruly. Still others merely slow. Hoping to improve their individual care and training, Goddard had pioneered the use of an intelligence test, which purported to measure a person's mental abilities in relation to that of so-called normal people of the same age. The scores enabled him to sort his charges into categories. To the existing classifications of idiot and imbecile,
See,
which
those
long had been used to describe debilitating mental impairment,
idiot, imbecile.
Goddard had added a third, a higher functioning group he called morons.
That was actually a diagnostic term and not just an insult. Henry Goddard argued the high-grade moron is high-functioning enough to act normal, but they're kind of stuck in this evolutionary phase and they don't emerge as true adults. What's missing is moral judgment.
See, moral. The more.
So Goddard constructs that term moron, and mental deficiency and immorality become basically interchangeable.
Let's finish.
Now,
These are his
towards tutoring. Goddard began to survey the family histories of 35 of his students at Vineland. What he found made him an instant believer in eugenics.
All right, we're going to pause.
Not only did morons seem clearly to pass on their feeble-mindedness to their offspring.
I don't know why you think I make this stuff up. End of spontaneous lesson for now. The word moron, which we've all known and used, stands for morally impaired. This guy, Henry Goddard, one of the eugenicists of the 1910, he was studying prisoners and, well, people that were in poverty, and he saw them as morally inferior. They couldn't make good judgments. You know, a lot of alcoholics. And so he said, you're morally inferior. You're a moron. Therefore, labeling an entire segment of the population, alienating them, and then certainly not caring for them, but because of the label, institutionalizing them and trying to prevent the women in those subgroups from bearing children. Alexis, how's the spontaneous lesson on eugenics doing for you this morning on a Monday?
Oh, it's interesting.
Isn't it something? Few more minutes, because we had a lot to do today. I don't forget. We have presentations and stuff. I don't forget. But few more minutes.
By claiming that it was a hidden menace that was more difficult to pinpoint than people might think.
By early 1910, Charles Davenport was convinced that certain human traits were passed down in a predictable way, and that American society could be dramatically improved if only reproduction were controlled. Anxious to spread the word, he began to lay plans for a new institution dedicated to eugenic research and education. In February, in search of a patron, Davenport traveled to New York to lunch with Mrs. E.H. Harriman, widow of a recently deceased railroad magnate.
He's looking for a sponsor.
Davenport's
I get it.
pitch to
All right.
Mrs. Harriman was to say,
See,
right now you give your money to all kinds of good organizations.
they're starting a eugenics institute. There's Charles Davenport and Henry Goddard, founders of the eugenics movement in America. Now they're looking for funding from wealthy socialites like Tom and Daisy. Look at her. She's a wealthy socialite. They want funding because they want to build huge university campuses to study, and they did. They did. They built the Eugenics Institute somewhere on the eastern seaboard.
Not the environment that makes you what you are. It's your genetic inheritance from your parents. So now, yes, let's regulate the matings of human beings, eliminate the bad genes in the population, and keep the fittest genes in the gene pool.
By limiting the birth of people who were deemed to be unfit, you were by definition enhancing the stock of human society. And so there was this social mission of really fighting dependency, fighting crime through eugenics. The idea was that eugenics would solve all of these broader social problems if enacted in a robust way.
Mrs. Harriman was a great believer in the importance of proper matings. She credited her late husband's interest in horse breeding for that. And she enthusiastically pledged to finance Davenport's eugenic enterprise. It was, Davenport later wrote in his journal, a red letter day for humanity.
The impulse to perfect humanity is an ancient aspiration. The idea that somehow or the other that you can get the best humans by selectively breeding the best, most fit, hardiest, most beautiful, it's an ancient desire. You find it in Sanskrit texts, you find it in Greek texts. The trouble is that only some human beings can dictate or decide what the correct features might be. Who decides?
Charles Davenport
That's right.
thought by breeding a superior race of people, we can bring about the millennial kingdom on earth.
The problem with utopias is that they set a set of aspirations that then blind you to
The
a certain set of
consequences, right?
And that can be dangerous.
They didn't understand the consequences of their actions. A whole lot of people are about to die because of these decisions. Sound familiar?
October 1910, on an 80-acre
Here's
plot
the institute.
adjacent to the Cold Spring Harbor campus, Charles Davenport opened the doors of his new institute. It was a modest structure built for a grand purpose: to house hereditary information on American families and use it to guide the reproductive choices of the nation. He called it the Eugenics Record Office.
Ideas were very much floating around as early as 1880.
Told you.
Davenport gave eugenics teeth. He was institutionalizing eugenics. He was marshaling people around a research program.
Davenport already had assembled a prestigious board of scientific directors, among them prominent scientists, physicians, and famed inventor Alexander Graham Bell. Day-to-day operations, meanwhile, would be overseen by Harry Laughlin, a high school superintendent from the Midwest with a lifelong passion for poultry breeding.
Laughlin was a very zealous proponent of eugenics, and in that sense,
Without being sarcastic. Without being sarcastic, Mr. Edwards, could you say that the eugenics movement tried to breed human beings like a farmer breeds chickens? They just said that. Let's see. Let's get back. It's there. It's there. Let's look at the chat. The richer get richer and the poorer get poorer. Get rid of the pores and your problem will be gone, according to eugenics. Now, what's absolutely interesting, I can't think of a more interesting thing on a Monday morning in July. At first, they try to justify eugenics, which we know to be the Greek word for born well. You want to be born well. You want to be born healthy. At first they thought, and maybe innocently, that they thought it would solve social problems. Violence, crime, alcoholism, poverty. Because if they could just get rid of those genes, there'd be no more alcoholism. This Charles Davenport, he looked at a whole lot of pedigree, which is family history, and he'd realized something which is absolutely true. That if grandpa had alcoholism, then dad had alcoholism, and now I'm an alcoholic. A lot of that is true, and science has proven there's genes for alcoholism. A lot of people have that in their genetic code. And I had previously referenced Gregor Mendel, Mendel. I hope you learned that from Dr. Jaji. He was the founder of the gene. He was a priest. One more check. It's too good. I can't help it. It's not my fault.
Not question.
Now they're collecting all this data.
Based on interpretation, impression, recollection by the living members of the family with whom they spoke. No checking.
Year by year, as trainees rotated out of the summer program and into positions at universities, hospitals, and mental institutions, Davenport's assumptions and methods of fieldwork gained currency all across the country. And year by year, the data accumulated. Stored in fireproof cabinets and intricately indexed, it comprised, as Scientific American noted, a sort of inventory of the blood of the community, and supplied grist for a multitude of books, pamphlets, lectures, and press releases regarding the danger of so-called inferior germplasm.
See,
They're using the family records.
now they're afraid of the inferior gene.
To prove all these traits, not just physical, but mental traits, moral traits, are caused by genes. There's nothing you can do about it. This is cold, hard, pure science.
Just as we have strains of scholars, of military men, Davenport told the New York Times, we have strains of paupers, of sex offenders, strains with strong tendencies toward larceny, assault, lying, running away. The cost to society of these strains is enormous.
Davenport took this basic idea, applied it far more widely than it had ever been before, and really promoted this probabilistic idea as if it were a deterministic one. That is to say, it's not just likelihoods, but in some ways we're dealing with certainties. And that idea really sold.
By the time the Eugenics Record Office issued its first official report in 1913, many Americans had begun to see the wisdom in eugenics. I agree with you that society has no business to permit degenerates to reproduce their kind.
Oh boy.
Former President Theodore Roosevelt told Davenport that year.
Teddy.
It is really extraordinary that our people refuse to apply to human beings such knowledge as every successful farmer is obliged to apply to his own stock breeding.
Oops.
If you're going to be in the business of breeding, you're going to have to convince thought leaders and politicians, most especially the government, to begin a kind of unprecedented program. So they understood from the beginning that they needed to persuade those who were in a position to do something about it that it was possible, indeed desirable.
The eugenicists thought that people's base interests are just self-serving, selfish, right? And if you just leave them to themselves, they're going to evolve in all these random, dumb directions.
The Eugenics Record Office recommended both widespread eugenic education and aggressive government intervention. Laws that would keep defectives out of the country, prohibit them from marrying, and prevent them from becoming parents by segregating them in asylums throughout their reproductive years.
It's happening in America.
Also recommended was a new and somewhat controversial surgical procedure known as sterilization.
I tried to explain this to you.
By cutting and sealing organs involved in reproduction, both men and women could be made infertile. So far, the technique had been used primarily on criminals, particularly sex offenders, and it was thought to have a curative effect. Harry Laughlin envisioned a broader application as a eugenic tool that would eliminate defective germplasm once and for all.
Harry Laughlin really has this political vision of what we can do with eugenics, and he said in order for eugenic sterilization to really do what had to be done, 15 million Americans would have to go under the knife.
The idea was that eugenics was for the common good, and by implementing the science of heredity, they could protect America and strengthen America.
They thought of it as the beginning of a revolution, of a religious movement. You have to start with a few converts, and then you try to grow it into a bigger movement. All that seemed exciting and full of possibility. And they were going to create a new world.
The eugenics movement that Charles Davenport had launched rested on Mendel's laws of inheritance, which assumed each trait was governed by one gene and was passed down in predictable patterns. But for all of Davenport's certainty about the gene, there remained open questions about the gene's physical properties and its location within the cell, and the means by which it accomplished its function. All over the world, scientists looked to fast-breeding organisms in search of clues. Some focused their experiments on the sea urchin, which turned out a new generation.
All right, we're going to take a pause.
Others on the even speedier meal.
Let me see how long it's on. It's on right now. It's so funny to me. It's on till 11 a.m. It's on another hour. I'm recording it. Okay, good morning once again. We got to get real. Alexis? Alexis?
Yeah.
So far, so good, right?
Yeah.
Do I have the right group here? Am I too advanced for the sophomores? Are you guys getting this? I'm saying that professionally and courteously. Are you seeing the importance of this scientific movement in relationship to Great Gatsby and what's possibly happening in the world today? Okay, good. I try not to be... If anybody's ever criticized my teaching, it's always the same criticism. Mr. Edwards, you should have been a college professor. I missed that calling. My brother's a college professor. There's that old saying, my dad put one student through college. My dad put one son through college. He put the other through a brick wall. I have one brother who's a doctor, and I have another brother who never went to college. It's a completely different spectrum in the Edwards home. But my brother is a college professor at University of California in Irvine, California. And I always followed him wherever he went. And like he was on the debate team, then I joined the debate team in high school. But in my attempt to become a college professor, high school got in the way. And here I am. So my point is, that's the stuff of college professors, studying stuff in great detail. Final word here for today. you now have a somewhat more advanced understanding of this American scientific movement. It started in the 1880s and again came to its conclusion in the 1940s in the Holocaust. Scientists who were working with animals to breed them, chickens and rabbits, to make a better chicken cutlet, to get more eggs. One scientist, his name was Charles Davenport. I wonder if Davenport, Iowa, was named after him. I'll have to find that out. He concluded that if we can make better eggs and better cuts of meat from animals, and we can produce higher quality food from breeding chickens, well, why don't we just apply that to humans? You could argue innocently, though dangerously, that he thought he was going to solve social problems. Hey, let's just get rid of people that have alcoholism. We'll not get rid of them. Let's not let them have any more babies, and let's stop the alcoholism in the gene pool. But unfortunately, as Peter pointed out, I do believe the conclusion, we're not actually watching the conclusion. I do believe the conclusion is that it created a greater gap between the rich and the poor, and the superior and the inferior. And any time, well, there's no exception to this rule. There is absolutely no exception to this rule. Anytime you classify people as superior or inferior, you're going to have people die at the hands of the government, which is what they're saying. At first, they were just scientists, but then they convinced the government to pass laws. They wanted 15 million in 1910. Hello, good morning. In 1910, they petitioned the U.S. government, Congress, to pass laws to allow the scientists and doctors to sterilize 15 million men and women that they have determined through their institute to have defective genes. I can't go on anymore. I tried very hard to convince you of that point. Okay, we got to do a couple of things. I'm getting complaints from the attendance office that I have not submitted my attendance. So here's what we have to do. I got to get better notes. Okay. I got a waste paper basket over there. I'm going to throw this piece of paper into the basket. I made it. Do you believe me? I missed. Okay. We're going to take a minute here. I need you to unmute or go into the chat box. The attendance has not been, the attendance records have not been, what do I want to say? The computer program that tracks attendance on Aspen has not been loaded for summer school. So I'm taking attendance manually. So when I call your name, tell me what your attendance was for all 5 days last week. Okay, so Alexandra.
I was here all week.
Yeah, perfect, right?
Yeah.
So that was 7/6 to 7/13, right? 7/11.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, there. Perfect. Alexis?
I was there all. I was present all week.
You guys have to forgive me. I can't take attendance without.
No.
I don't want to mark you absent. Andrew?
I was present all week.
Ariana?
I had missed Monday, but went Tuesday through Friday.
So Monday was 7-6. Brandon?
I was here every day besides Tuesday and Wednesday.
Brandon, wait, was that? Oh, my bad. Who answered? Brandon Skinner or Brandon Lozano?
I answered Skinner.
Brandon Lozano? Okay. I'm sorry about this. I really want it's my fault, but not really. Caesar?
I missed Friday.
I'm very happy that you're being very honest. Devin?
I missed that the first day, Monday.
Thank you. It's not going to affect your grade per se if you're doing the homework. Elijah?
I was here all day. I mean, all week.
Obviously. Scholar. Fanny?
I was absent the 8th.
Fanny, someday you come to my classroom when we go back to school and ask me for a book called Fanny. It's one of my favorite novels ever written. It's just say Fanny. It's called Fanny, okay?
Okay.
About a young woman your age named Fanny who happens to be a misunderstood genius, okay?
Yes.
$50 says tomorrow, true or false, in this house, Mr. Edwards could produce a book called Fanny. True or false? In the home. Okay, you don't want to take that bet? Because I have a copy in the basement. You can believe it. There are some books, very few, knowing that I don't even own a copy of Gatsby. I mean, I own 500 copies of Gatsby, but I don't have any at home. I have some books that I care about so much. I have a copy at home. I have a copy at school. 1 or 2 books. I have a copy in my trunk. Johnny Tolentino. JT. Perfect. Of course. I knew that. I know who my students are. Do you know what they said? And they've been pounding me. They sent me an email last night at 9:15 p.m. They said, Mr. Edwards, where's your attendance sheet? And I said, I don't know. I just memorized it. And they didn't know how to respond. Jose? Perfect. We're going to accept perfect for Jose. Perfect, right? Oh, what? You just blew my curve. My bad. Jacqueline? Good man. Then we have to figure out where some of the people that are absent today are. Liam? Good, good, good. Marcelo? Mark Vick? Mari Carmen? You get full credit. You can always duck out early if you've got something, important to do, like a doctor's appointment. I'm not that. I mean, I'm not. I appreciate your honesty, Mauricio.
I was here all week.
I believe you. Actually, this is probably the best way to take attendance every Monday for the previous week if I can get away with it. Because otherwise, would you rather just spend 10 minutes on a Monday and get it done for the whole week? Or 3 minutes a day? Yeah, I don't know. They promised me an attendance sheet. They never sent it. Who's they? I don't know. The Eugenics Institute. Natalie?
I was here all week. I left early on Friday.
And you sent me an email, so you're excused. Oscar? You guys are doing awesome with your attendance. I, of course, have perfect attendance. And no tardies. Ho, 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 look at you, Mr. Superior. See what I'm talking about? Peter?
I was here all week.
I believe that. Sebastian?
I only missed Monday.
Okay, that's okay. Again, these are absences. I'm gonna have a meeting with the summer school teachers today and Mr. Whip, Mrs. Tobias, and they're gonna determine how many absences until you get disenrolled from the course. But nobody's ever anywhere near there. Today's I meet with when I meet later with the team, Peter Stavrola. Perfect. Now I gotta go to my attendance record, and I gotta see who's absent today, because we have way too many absences. There's 32 people in this class. So let me go to my attendance record here. Now, Mike, Alexandra's here, Alexis is here, Andrew. Is Anaya here? How am I making a mistake? Where's Anaya? Oh, there she is. It looks like I skipped some people by accident. I apologize, Anaya. It's probably my eyes, but I went to Andrew to Ariana, I believe, on my notes. I did. So Anaya, also who sent me an email, excused. Brandon's okay. Brian Olivares. Is Brian on this chat? No, right? Does anybody know how many classes he's missed? 2? Caesar's on here, right? Yes. Devin on here?
Yes.
Let me just double check, Devin. Yes. Edward's absent. I'm almost done. Elijah's here. Eric Pasquale, he's not here. If your name is Eric Pasquale, speak up. Fanny. Isabella Harris. Where's Jimmy? Jimmy Lua. I'm almost done. Johnny, you're here. Tolentino. Jose, you're here. Where's Juan Carlos? I'm almost there. Ja, Quinn, Liam, Marcelo. I got Marcelo, right? Yes. And then I'm almost done. Mark Vic, Mari Carmen, Mauricio, Natalie, Oscar, Peter. Ooh, Rosalind's absent. And Sebastian. And has anybody heard from Yazalin Guzman? Does anybody know who she is? Okay, we're done. I want to do one thing real quick because I'm going to go crazy if I don't. I just want to look at a few notes. That eugenics thing threw me for a curveball. Here. You guys will.
The traditional American stock. And he wasn't alone in that. There was this fear that the right sort of American wasn't having enough children, and the race as it existed was being diluted and polluted by incoming waves of immigrants.
Most immigrants used to come from Northern and Western Europe, from the British Isles, from Germany. And then all of a sudden in the 1890s, immigrants started coming here from Eastern Europe, from Southern Europe. These are Catholics, these are Jews, these are peasants. And Davenport feels correctly that his race is losing the demographic game.
On the receiving end of Davenport's letter was Madison Grant.
Okay, we're going to start.
Convert to the eugenics cause. With a sterling American pedigree and an abiding.
So there's your conclusion to eugenics. Your conclusion to eugenics is where they don't want the wrong people to breed. They do want the right people to breed. They just can't find enough of them. Hey, watch this magic trick. You're going to see it now. Mr. Edwards, yes. If you said that eugenics in America lasted from 1880 to about 1940, did it successfully breed out some human beings and traits that were considered to be unwanted to this day? Listen, I try not to get too off task, but I'm going to make an important point. The whole point of the Holocaust was to eliminate the Jews, certainly from Europe, if not the face of the earth. In less than in 4 years, give or take, 66% of all the Jews on planet Earth were murdered. The numbers of Jewish people post-Holocaust dipped so low that to this day, they're still underrepresented as a people. There are still, I used to say, there are not a whole lot. They lost millions and millions and millions of people, and it's hard to reproduce at that rate. So I really don't know it's the eugenics effect on today, though we could find out. See here, now they're talking about blacks, the African American black experience.
The threat posed by the foreign-born, however, was at once more insidious and more.
See, now they're talking about threats to American breeding from.
The altruistic ideal and the maudlin sentimentalism that made America
We got to move on.
an asylum for the oppressed are sweeping the nation toward a racial abyss.
See, now here comes.
Proud boasts of our fathers that they acknowledged no distinction in race, creed, or color, or else turn the page of history and write Fymj America.
End of America.
Concerned only with survival of the fittest individual, and he says we need to be concerned with the survival of the fittest race. We need to preserve the Nordic race.
That's what Tom Buchanan said.
Grant's mission in 1920 was to rally his fellow eugenicists and convince the federal government to drastically reduce immigration. He began with a charm offensive directed at Congressman Albert Johnson, the chairman of the House Committee on Immigration and Naturalization.
Right, that's enough. Because now you know. It's the exact language of the Great Gatsby. Tom Buchanan says we need to preserve the Nordic race. And that's what they're saying. Okay. I'm going to look at the homework and see what's going on. Make sure I got to keep you somewhat honest. So let me just look at. Okay. Oh, good. Let's start with the poetry. I got a good question from a student yesterday. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pick the first person to hand it in the work. I'm going to look at her table of poetry. Okay. So this is one of your classmates. She was the first one to turn in the work. She'll probably recognize her work. So for narrative, story in a poem, she has The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe because it tells the story of this man who's visited by this strange bird. For lyrical, personal poetry based on emotions and feelings in the first person I, she says, I wrote a poem about myself. I'm a poet. I write poetry. Closed, counting syllables. In other words, a poem that is highly structured. She's got 6 flags. Open. You can't count syllables. The poem is too loose. She has restaurants aren't open because of the pandemic. Metrical, structure. The United States Military Academy at West Point, and free verse, no structure, Come Slowly, Eden by Emily Dickinson. How did you know Emily Dickinson? Who taught you Emily Dickinson? She's one of my favorite poets. Alexis, have you ever heard of Emily Dickinson?
No.
Alexandra, have you ever heard of Emily Dickinson?
Yes, I have. I read one of her poems back in middle school.
Who was your middle school teacher? I need to go give her Teacher of the Year.
Jason Fontanetta.
Okay, Mr. Fontanetta gets an A. We could look at Emily Dickinson if we have time next week. She's one of the most important American poets of the Civil War era. She wrote 1,000 poems that were never published in her lifetime. When she died, they found them underneath her bed in shoe boxes. We'll get to that. Let's look at more homework. I'm just going in the order that I received them without naming names. Okay. Good. Let me look at another one. Narrative. The Raven. I see what you did. All right, I've looked at enough. Let me look at one more. I do appreciate how one of you titled your notes in French. Very cool. All right, let's review. Back to the Raven. Now, so a narrative poem is a story in a poem, okay? So you seem to have that fairly basic. It's not a hard concept. Does the poem tell a story? Then it's narrative. Lyrical is more about individual feelings and thoughts. You seem to got a basic grasp of that. Closed. Closed is when you can count syllables. Now let's go to the Raven. That's so funny. Well, let's go to the Raven.
Hi, Mr. Edwards.
Who's saying that?
Nayeli.
Nayeli Sanchez?
Yes, sir.
Notice how Mr. Edwards always knows his students. Who's your little sister or brother?
Ariana Gutierrez.
Well, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm doing what I'm trying to teach these young people. You're welcome to
Yeah,
stick around.
I heard your voice and I was like, that's Mr. Edwards.
Who's your little sister?
Ariana.
Ariana Gutierrez. I'll keep an eye out for her.
Please do.
Are you still going to college up in Minnesota?
No, I'm in Iowa.
Iowa. I was so close.
Yeah. Minnesota was my dream school, remember?
Wait, what was it called again?
St. Olaf.
St. Olaf, right.
That was the dream school.
Actually referenced in The Great Gatsby. Yeah, I remember you came and visited me with your roommate or another. I think she went to St. Olaf too. I can't remember, but you guys knocked out
No, she was at we're at Co right now.
Oh, Co, that's what it was.
Yeah.
She went to the Marine Academy, I think.
I don't know.
It was Co that I was trying to think of.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you back to teaching.
Well, you can always check in. I really miss you, and I hope you have a wonderful summer.
You too.
Okay, bye. Okay, let's go back to the Raven. Mr. Edwards never forgets his students. Raven time. Oh, my Ravens. Okay, I'm gonna I got the Raven in the cage in the basement. I'll bring it up later this week. All right. Remember, Poetry Foundation. The Raven. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there doubting, fearing, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. And the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This word I whispered, and the echo murmured back the word Lenore, merely this and nothing. Okay, let's review. You know what? I'm really glad you said that. Because as a narrative poem, we can tell the story. If you really want to follow the Miss Redwood scholarship on the Raven, you will do the following. Mark the plot or story from each stanza. I'll review right now. Stanza 1. It's midnight in December, and a man hears a scratching at his door. Stanza 2. This reminds him of his dead love, presumably his wife, Lenore. Is that Lenore, the ghost of Lenore at the door? Stanza 3. He's alone. He's scared. He's starting to feel fantastic terror because there's somebody or something outside his door. Stanza 4. He believes he's being rude. So he says, "Excuse me, I was taking a gentle sleep. Who are you? How can I help you?" Stanza 5. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wandering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore, merely this and nothing more. He hears the whisper of his lost love. Is that you, Lenore? My lost love? Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more. In stanza 6, he concludes that all the noise outside his chamber door is just the wind howling on an old, creaky night. All right. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wandering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and the echo murmured back the word Lenore, merely this and nothing more. So he gets up from his chair where he was dozing off. He's standing on the inside of the chamber door, and he whispers, "Lenore, is that you?" But then the echo through the huge vaulted ceiling brings back, and he hears his own echo. He hears Lenore. He thinks, and I think research would bear out, he thinks at first he's been visited by the ghost of his lost love. I can't think of anything sadder than having your love lost and the loneliness, and he's so afraid. In fact, he's full of fantastic terror. I'm going to push the envelope a little bit. Open here. Okay, wait. Whoa, 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 whoa. He concludes at the end of chapter 6, my bad, verse 6, he concludes, "'Tis the wind and nothing more." It's just the wind swirling and pounding outside my chamber door. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter. I can't do it without my prop. Alexis. Alexis.
Yeah.
Can I go get my prop? Yes or no?
Yes.
We'll take a 2-minute break for prop time. 2 minutes. I can't do it without my prop. I'll be right back.
Brandon, no.
Brandon, yes.
You again. So how was everyone's day?
Terrible. I have COVID.
I'm fine. Nice.
I'm dying in my room.
Can I
I
come?
was wondering why you'd sound so sleepy. It sounded like you just woke up like 5 minutes ago.
You need to take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
I'm gonna get myself some orange juice.
Okay, I'm back. Break's over. Everybody back online right now. Is everybody back, Alexis? Alexis.
Yeah.
Just got back.
I couldn't find my one raven, but luckily I have 2 ravens. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in stepped in a saintly raven of this, a stately raven of the saintly days of yours. Not the least obeisance made, not a minute stopped her I'm out of breath from running up the stairs to the basement. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in stepped in a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, when with mien of lord or lady, he perched upon my chamber door. He perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. He perched and sat, and nothing more. So, I guess what I'm suggesting is that the first, I got to give the raven a nice home. Well, we'll leave the raven today. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, are sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. This raven flies in through the window, perches on a pallid bust of Pallas, that's Pallas Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom, and stares at this man. Stares at Poe. And Poe is essentially, who are you? What do you want? And the raven says nothing. Then Poe continues, tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. That's the Roman god Pluto, the caretaker of hell. Tell me what your name is. You just bust in through my window. You perched on my bust of Pallas. Who are you? And then the raven proceeds to say, nevermore. If you want to unlock the mystery of the raven, you have to answer the question, nevermore. What does the raven mean by saying nevermore? And over the next few days, you'll know. But right now, see, he says, hard for you to get this with, he says, not the least obeisance, obeisance, I gotta ask, not the least, wait, hold on. Not the least obeisance made he. That is a very complicated word from the old days. That means respect. That immediately when this raven comes into the Poe's home, there is no respect. And so this bird that stares this man down is very frustrating to this man. And so he gets demanding, and he says, what is thy lordly name? What is thy Christian name? And the bird just sits there nonchalantly, cool as a cucumber. Nevermore. Nevermore. What's your name? Nevermore. Nevermore. Nevermore, question mark. Nevermore. So you have this lopsided conversation between man and bird. Okay, let's go to The Great Gatsby. It's getting late. Chapter 6. Okay, let's do a check-in. Ariana, how are you?
Good.
Is your sister really Nayeli?
Yeah.
I taught her sophomore and senior year.
Yeah, she told me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'll never make that mistake again. Your sister was wonderful. She was very helpful to me. You guys know that, well, she made that, she made all the artwork outside my door with Leslie.
Oh, she did? I didn't know that.
You know those big pieces of artwork I have, the African American woman and then the Hispanic, whatever, Rosie the Riveter, whatever. Okay, sophomores, I get it. Let's go to Great Gatsby. Chapter 6. Can anybody recap chapter 5?
The Great Gatsby has an identity crisis on what type of book it wants to be.
Fair. True. The Oh, we got to start marking page numbers. I keep thinking I'm going to remember the page numbers. I need somebody to mark the page number. Oh, there's chapter 5. We read that. Okay. There it is. Oh, I just lost it. I hate when I do that. Boo. I think I went way beyond. Oh, I'm way beyond. Yep. Stop chapter 6. In the meantime, in between time, hey, we got fun. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 6. Peter actually said something that would be perfect for college scholarship. And that is, how do you classify The Great Gatsby as a genre? Is it a love story? Is it a tragic love story? Is it a absurd or farcical love story, what we call a comedic story, though it's not really funny like a comedy routine, but more of an absurdity because he acts so irrationally. And then we have to answer, I believe it was Alexandra's question, which has still not been correctly answered. Is his love pure and whole and healthy, or is his love obsessive? It's not good. We've all been on both sides of the love as obsession coin, and it's not good. And there's evidence that the one thing that I would always argue is if within an hour of him rekindling his love with Daisy after 5 years of separation, where she presumes he was killed in war, within an hour of them rekindling their romance, he's showing her literally his sock drawer. Look at my suits and ties. Aren't I great? It's just really something to me. To this day, I've never shown Mrs. Edwards my sock drawer. Okay, let's go. Chapter 6. Is everybody okay?
Yep.
Okay. We'll read for a little while, and then we'll talk. Let me make sure I'm not missing any important chats. Okay. Chapter 6. About this time, an ambitious young reporter from New York arrived one morning at Gatsby's door and asked him if he had anything to say. Anything to say about what? Inquired Gatsby politely. Why, any statement to give out? It transpired after a confused 5 minutes that the man had heard Gatsby's name around his office in a connection which he either wouldn't reveal or didn't fully understand. This was his day off, and with laudable initiative, he had hurried out to see. It was a random shot, and the reporter's instinct was right. Gatsby's notoriety spread about by hundreds who had accepted his hospitality and so became authorities on his past, had increased all summer until he fell just short of being news. Contemporary legends, such as the underground pipeline to Canada, attached themselves to him. And there was one persistent story that he didn't live in a house at all, but in a boat that looked like a house and was moved secretly up and down the Long Island shore. Just why these inventions were a source of satisfaction to James Gasts of North Dakota isn't easy to say. So Gatsby's two people. He's James Gatz, who's from North Dakota, which sounds very uninspiring and unromantic. And then he's Jay Gatsby, millionaire playboy, socialite, man of mystery. So one thing I need you to always know about Gatsby, knowing that you have to write a very comprehensive essay for your final that will be due in 2 weeks. Gatsby, formerly known as James Gatz, reinvented himself. He changed his name. He changed parts of his past. I guess you could argue he combined elements of truth with elements of fairy tale or legend, but his past is starting to catch up with him. Like, did you really go to Oxford? James Gatz. That was really, or at least legally, his name. He had changed it at the age of 17 and at the specific moment that witnessed the beginning of his career. When he saw Dan Cody's yacht drop anchor over the most insidious flat on Lake Superior. It was James Gatz who had been loafing along the beach that afternoon in a torn green jersey and a pair of canvas pants. But it was already Jay Gatsby who borrowed a rowboat, pulled out to the Tuolumne, and informed Cody that a wind might catch him and break him up in half an hour. I suppose he'd had the name ready for a long time, even then. His parents were shiftless and unsuccessful farm people. His imagination had never really accepted them as his parents at all. The truth was that Jay Gatsby of West Egg, Long Island, sprang from his platonic conception of himself. He was a son of God, a phrase which, if it means anything, means just that. And he must be about his father's business, the service of a vast, vulgar, and meretricious beauty. So he invented just the sort of Jay Gatsby that a 17-year-old boy would be likely to invent. And to this conception, he was faithful to the end. For over a year, he had been beating his way along the south shore of Lake Superior as a clam digger and a salmon fisher, or in any other capacity that bought him food and bed. His brown, hardening body lived naturally through his half-fierce, half-lazy work of the bracing days. He knew women early, and since they spoiled him, he became contemptuous of them. Of young virgins because they were ignorant, of the others because they were hysterical about things which in his overwhelming self-absorption he took for granted. But his heart was in a constant, turbulent riot. The most grotesque and fantastic conceits haunted him in his bed at night. A universe of ineffable gaudiness spun itself out in his brain while the clock ticked on the washstand and the moon soaked with wet lights his tangled clothes upon the floor. Each night he added to the pattern of his fancies until drowsiness closed down upon some vivid scene with an oblivious embrace. For a while, these reveries provided an outlet for his imagination. They were a satisfactory hint of the unreality of reality, a promise that the rock of the world was founded securely on a fairy's wing. Mr. Edwards, yeah? Is F. Scott Fitzgerald suggesting that Gatsby's a dreamer? An idealist? A romantic? He had very little investment in his roots. He couldn't get away faster. He didn't feel that he belonged to his parents. He struggled through life as a clam digger. He's drifting aimlessly like a hobo in search of Don Quixote and King Arthur, in search of Lost Grail, romance. I don't know. You'd really have to be 17 years old to know, because that's when he made all those decisions. Hey! And you thought Mr. Edwards made it up. An instinct toward his future glory had led him some months before to the small Lutheran College of St. Olaf in southern Minnesota. Ariana, didn't Nayeli go to St. Olaf for a little bit?
I don't know, honestly.
Remember she said St. Olaf?
Yeah, she had said something about that.
And now she goes to Co?
Yeah.
Great Gatsby went to St. Olaf in Minnesota. Oh, Mr. Edwards. Okay, I get it. I told you so. He stayed there 2 weeks, dismayed at its ferocious indifference to the drums of his destiny, to destiny itself, and despising the janitor's work with which he was to pay his way through. Then he drifted back to Lake Superior, and he was still searching for something to do on that day that Dan Cody's yacht dropped anchor in the shallows along shore. Drums of destiny. There's no longer any doubt. Great Gatsby, formerly Jay Gatz, at the age of 17, believes that he has to fulfill his destiny. Now, Dan Cody is Gatsby's mentor, who schools him in the ways of life. Cody was 50 years old, a product of the Nevada silver fields, of the Yukon, of every rush for metals since 75. The transactions in Montana copper that made him many times a millionaire found him physically robust, but on the verge of soft-mindedness. And suspecting this, an infinite number of women tried to separate him from his money. The none too savory ramifications by which Ella Kay, the newspaper woman, played Madame de Montanen to his weakness and sent him to sea in a yacht, were common knowledge to the turgid journalism of 1902. He had been coasting along all too hospitable shores for 5 years when he turned up as James Gatz's destiny at Little Girl Bay. To the young Gatz, resting on his oars and looking up at the railed deck, the yacht represented all the beauty and glamour in the world. I supposed he smiled at Cody. He had probably discovered that people liked him when he smiled. At any rate, Cody asked him a few questions. One of them elicited the brand new name and found that he was quick and extravagantly ambitious. A few days later, he took him to Duluth and bought him a blue coat, 6 pair of white duck trousers, and a yachting cap. And when the Tuolumne left for the West Indies and the Barbary Coast, Gatsby left too. This is the creation of Gatsby. Dan Cody was a successful miner, copper mines, whatever, silver mines, the Yukon, which infers gold mines, the 1875 gold rush. Cody made great profit, became a millionaire, bought himself a yacht, sees this drifting kid at the age of 17 and says, I'm going to take you under my wing. What's your name? Gatz? Pfft, what kind of name is Gatz? How about we call you Gatsby? Okay. You look like an ambitious young man. I am, sir. You want a big yacht like me? I do, sir. You want all this and more? I do, sir. Then come with me. We're going to get on that yacht. We're going to go across the Atlantic to the coast of Africa and go explore the world. Let's go. By the way, I couldn't get away from my parents any faster. No offense to the parents. I'm saying he's rootless. He had to leave. Because at the age of 17, he believed destiny was calling. Oh, Mr. Edwards, didn't the phrase Fitzgerald use called the drums of destiny? Boom, 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 boom. I did something similar without the material wealth when I was 19, I moved out of I moved out of the house when I was 18 for my first year of college. But actually, that's not true. I lived at home my first year of college. I went to Loyola for my first year. I moved to England when I was 19 years old. I moved to England the month I turned 19 because I just had to get away. I was going bust. I was going through what Gatsby's going without the wealth and without the destiny. I didn't know what I wanted. I had been accepted to several schools. I got a debate scholarship, but I don't know. I can't get into all that right now. I got a job at Joel's. I worked for the better part of a year. I saved all my money. I put it all in an envelope. I hid it in the bottom of my parents' freezer. And when I had, at that time, now we're going back 30. We're going back 30 years. I had a couple of $1,000 cash saved. I mean, I know with Mr. Rivers, it sounds preposterous. I only had a couple of thousand, maybe 1,500, but it was enough to get me a plane ticket to go to Europe. And my parents couldn't stop me. I was 19. I still got the duffel bag right there in the closet. I got my duffel. You stay right there. Don't you dare move. There's no break. I packed everything I owned into this duffel bag. And I went to Europe at the age of 19. I lived there for 14 months. And I never got a nickel from anybody. I had to go. I turned 21 in England. To the young Getz, he was employed in a vague personal capacity. While he remained with Cody, he was in turn steward, mate, skipper, secretary, and even jailer for Dan Cody sober, knew what lavish doings Dan Cody drunk might soon be about, and he provided for such contingencies by reposing more and more trust in Gatsby. The arrangement lasted 5 years, during which the boat went 3 times around the continent. It might have lasted indefinitely, except for the fact that Ella Kay came on board one night in Boston, and a week later, Dan Cody inhospitably died. Gatsby and Cody traveled around the world on Cody's yacht for 5 years, and Cody's love interest, Ella Kay, somehow led to Cody's death. And now Gatsby to this day has a picture of Cody in his bedroom. Back to Nick Carraway. I remember the portrait of him up in Gatsby's room. That's Dan Cody. A gray, florid man with a hard, empty face, the pioneer debauchee who during one phase of American life brought back to the eastern seaboard the savage violence of the frontier brothel and saloon. It was indirectly due to Cody that Gatsby drank so little, because Cody was an alcoholic. Sometimes in the course of gay parties, women used to rub champagne into Gatsby's hair. For himself, he formed the habit of letting liquor alone. Gatsby does not drink. And it was from Cody that he inherited money, a legacy of $25,000. But he didn't get it. He never understood the legal device that was used against him, but what remained of the millions went intact to Ella Kay. He was left with his singularly appropriate education. The vague contour of Jay Gatsby had filled out to the substantiality of a man. Gatsby was supposed to inherit $25,000 from Cody, but he didn't get a nickel because of some lawyers, and all of it went to Cody's ex-flame, who Ella Kay. He told me all this very much later, but I've put it down here with the idea of exploding those first wild rumors about his antecedents, which weren't even faintly true. Moreover, he told it to me at a time of confusion when I had reached the point of believing everything and nothing about him. So I take advantage of this short halt, while Gatsby, so to speak, caught his breath, so to clear this set of misconceptions away. It was a halt, too, in my association with his affairs. For several weeks, I didn't see him or hear his voice on the phone. Mostly, I was in New York, trotting around with Jordan and trying to ingratiate myself with her senile aunt. But finally, I went over to his house one Sunday afternoon. I hadn't been there 2 minutes when somebody brought Tom Buchanan in for a drink. I was startled, naturally, but the really surprising thing was that it hadn't happened before. There was a party of 3 on horseback. Tom and a man named Sloan and a pretty woman in a brown riding habit who had been there previously. We're switching scenes now. The backstory of James Gatz and Dan Cody, back to West and East Egg Village, and back to real time, where Nick hasn't seen Gatsby in several weeks. He's out carousing with Jordan and just working every day. And now, some lazy afternoon, Tom Buchanan is playing polo on his horses or riding horses through East Egg Village with a couple of friends, and they're all going to kind of conspire again. You know, they're all going to hook up again and have these conversations. I'm delighted to see you, said Gatsby, standing on his porch. I'm delighted that you dropped in, as though they cared. Sit right down, have a cigarette or a cigar. He walked around the room quickly, ringing bells. I'll have something to drink for you in just a minute. He was profoundly affected by the fact that Tom was there. But he would be uneasy anyhow until he had given them something, realizing in a vague way that it was all they came for. Mr. Sloan wanted nothing. A lemonade? No, thanks. A little champagne? Nothing at all. Thanks, I'm sorry. Did you have a nice ride? Very good roads around here. I suppose the automobiles, yeah. Moved by an irresistible impulse, Gatsby turned to Tom, who had accepted the introduction as a stranger. I believe we've met somewhere before, Mr. Buchanan. Oh, yes, said Tom, gruffly polite, but obviously not remembering. So we did. I remember very well. About 2 weeks ago, that's right. You were with Nick here. I know your wife, continued Gatsby almost aggressively. That's so? Tom turned to me. You live near here, Nick? That's pretty risque, Gatsby saying to another man in that time, I know your wife. That's so? Next door. That's so? Because Nick and Gatsby are neighbors. Mr. Sloan didn't enter into the conversation, but lounged back haughtily in his chair. The woman said nothing either, until unexpectedly, after 2 highballs, she became cordial. We'll all come over to your next party, Mr. Gatsby, she suggested. What do you say? Certainly. I'd be delighted to have you. Be very nice, said Mr. Sloan without gratitude. Well, think out to be starting home. Please don't hurry, Gatsby urged them. He had control of himself now, and he wanted to see more of Tom. Why don't you? Why don't you stay for supper? I wouldn't be surprised if some other people dropped in from New York. You come to supper with me, said the lady enthusiastically. Both of you. This included me. Mr. Sloan got to his feet. Come along, he said, but to her only. I mean it, she insisted. I'd love to have you. Lots of room. Gatsby looked at me unquestioningly. He wanted to go, and he didn't see that Mr. Sloan had determined he shouldn't. I'm afraid I won't be able to, I said. Will you come, she urged, concentrating on Gatsby. Mr. Sloan murmured something close to her ear. We won't be late if we start now, she insisted aloud. I haven't got a horse, said Gatsby. I used to ride in the army, but I've never bought a horse. I'll have to follow you in my car. Excuse me for just a minute. See?
And the nation's attention diverted by a conflict
See?
that consumed much of the world.
See your eugenics? How it ends in war?
Then came the liberation of Buchenwald and Dachau.
The concentration camps.
And the chilling evidence of eugenic policies carried to a monstrous extreme.
early mid-1940s. The full horror of what happens in Nazi Germany becomes apparent. The movement from sterilization to extermination, the killing of several millions based on this kind of idea of the betterment of human race. And it creates a vast embarrassment for the American eugenics movement.
People were repelled and began to turn away from eugenics. And eugenics became a dirty word.
The Holocaust being tied to a wide range of eugenic practices is a blemish on humans as a species. And it undercuts any notion that eugenics was a positive force in American society.
Surgical sterilization was thought to be too slow and too expensive to be used on a mass scale.
After the war, when the Allies put the Nazis on trial at Nuremberg, one of the charges was eugenic sterilization. And the lawyer for the Nazi who was charged said, how can you charge my client with the crime of eugenic sterilization when your own US Supreme Court said this was okay?
Now you know. I guess you know.
By the end of the 1940s, the eugenics movement had faded from the mainstream of American life. But the laws that had been passed in the name of eugenics would remain on the books for decades, barring some people from entering the country and others from...
Okay, that's the last word on eugenics. I'm sorry, but it was playing in the background. See, now you can't claim to be ignorant. The rest of us walked out on the porch where Sloan and the lady began an impassioned conversation aside. My God, I believe the man's coming, said Tom. Doesn't he know she doesn't want him? They're all going out for a ride, and they're on horses, and Gatsby doesn't have a horse, so he's going to follow them in their car. And Tom hates Gatsby, and this is a very bizarre part of the story where it's like they're trying to maintain social customs while they still hate each other. My God, I believe the man's coming, said Tom. Doesn't he know that nobody wants him? She says she does want him. She has a big dinner party, and he won't know a soul there, he frowned. Tom's like, Gatsby does not need to be with our party. I wondered where in the devil he met Daisy. See, Gatsby says to Tom, I know your wife. That is, you can't say that. I wonder where in the devil he met Daisy. By God, I may be old-fashioned in my ideas, but women run around too much these days to suit me. They meet all kinds of crazy fish. Suddenly, Mr. Sloan and the lady walked down the steps and mounted their horses. Come on, said Mr. Sloan to Tom. We're late. We've got to go. And then tell him he couldn't wait. Well, will you? Tom and I shook hands. That's Nick. The rest of us exchanged a cool nod, and they trotted quickly down the drive, disappearing into the August foliage just as Gatsby, with hat and light, overcoat in hand, came out the front door. Tom was evidently perturbed at Daisy's running around alone, for on the following Saturday night, he came with her to Gatsby's party. So, this is the last interruption before I read a longer stretch of the story. Finally, after months of Gatsby throwing parties, so Daisy would show up, Tom decides that Daisy and he are going to go to a Gatsby party. So now, Tom and Daisy, on any night of the week, go to Gatsby's party. Wonder how that'll turn out. Perhaps his presence gave the evening its peculiar quality of oppressiveness. It stands out in my memory from Gatsby's other parties that summer. There were the same people, or at least the same sort of people, the same profusion of champagne, the same many-colored, many-keyed commotions, but I felt an unpleasantness in the air, a pervading harshness that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps I had merely grown used to it, grown to accept West Egg as a world complete in itself, with its own standards, its own great figure, second to nothing because it had no consciousness of being. So, and I now was looking at it again through Daisy's eyes. It is invariably saddening to look through the new eyes and things upon which you have expended your own powers of adjustment. They arrived at twilight, and as we strolled out among the sparkling hundreds, Daisy's voice was playing murmurous tricks in her throat. These things excite me so, she whispered. If you want to kiss me any time during the evening, Nick, just let me know, and I'll be glad to arrange it for you. Just mention my name or present a green card. I'm giving out green... Look around, suggested Gatsby. I'm looking around. I'm having a marvelous... You must see the faces of many people you've heard about. Tom's arrogant eyes roamed the crowd. We don't go around very much, he said. In fact, I was just thinking I don't know a soul here. Perhaps you know that lady, Gatsby indicated a gorgeous, scarcely human orchid of a woman who sat in state under a white plum tree. Tom and Daisy stared with that peculiarly unreal feeling that accompanies the recognition of a hitherto ghostly celebrity of the movies. She's lovely, says Daisy. The man bending over her is her director. He took them ceremoniously from group to group. Mrs. Buchanan and Mr. Buchanan. After an instant's hesitation, he added, the polo player. Oh, no, objected Tom quickly, not me. But evidently the sound of it pleased Gatsby, for Tom remained the polo player for the rest of the evening. I've never met so many celebrities, Daisy exclaimed. I like that man. What was his name? With a sort of blue nose. Gatsby identified him, adding that he was a small producer. Well, I liked him anyhow. I'd a little rather not be the polo player, said Tom pleasantly. I'd rather look at all these famous people in oblivion. Daisy and Gatsby danced. Ho, 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 ho. Whoa, 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 whoa. I remember being surprised by his graceful conservative foxtrot. I had never seen him dance before. Then they sauntered over to my house and sat on the steps for half an hour, while at her request I remained watchfully in the garden. In case there's a fire or a flood, she explained, or any act of God. Or if Tom should come over. Mr. Edwards, yes, pretty risky. Gatsby runs away with another man's wife during a party with the husband. Yeah. Tom appeared from his oblivion as he was sitting down to supper together. Do you mind if I eat with some people over here, he said. A fellow's getting off some funny stuff. Go ahead, answered Daisy genially. And if you want to take down any addresses, here's my little gold pencil. She looked around after a moment and told me the girl was common but pretty, and I knew that except for the half hour she'd been alone with Gatsby, she wasn't having a good time. So they're second now. That's twice now that Gatsby and Daisy sneak off for a private conversation that we never hear. At Nick's tea party and at Gatsby's party that one night, they sneak over to Nick's house and sit on Nick's porch for a half an hour, and Nick watches guard so Tom doesn't get suspicious. Mr. Edwards? Yeah, exactly. She's married. Gatsby had been called to the phone, and I enjoyed these same people only 2 weeks before. But what had amused me then turned septic on the ear now. How do you feel, Miss Bideker? The girl addressed was trying unsuccessfully to slump against my shoulder. In this inquiry, she sat up and opened her eyes. What? A massive and lethargic woman who had been urging Daisy to play golf with her at the local club tomorrow spoke in Miss Bideker's defense. Oh, she's all right now. When she's had 5 or 6 cocktails, she always starts screaming like that. I tell her she ought to leave it alone. I do leave it alone, affirmed the accused hollowly. Here, we heard you yelling, so I said to Doc Savette here, there's somebody that needs your help, Doc. She's much obliged, I'm sure, said another friend without gratitude, but you got her dress all wet when you stuck her head in the pool. Anything I hate is to get my head stuck in a pool, mumbled Miss Bideker. They almost drowned me once over in New Jersey. Then you ought to leave it alone. That's the alcohol, countered Dr. Savette. Speak for yourself, cried Miss Bideker violently. Your hand shakes. I wouldn't let you operate on me. I was like that. Almost the last thing I remember was standing with Daisy and watching the moving picture director and his star. They were still under the white plum tree, and their faces were touching except for a pale thin ray of moonlight between. It occurred to me that he had been very slowly bending toward her all evening to attain this proximity. And even while I watched, I saw him stoop one ultimate degree and kiss at her cheek. I like her, said Daisy. I think she's lovely. But the rest offended her, and inarguably, because it wasn't a gesture but an emotion. She was appalled by West Egg, this unprecedented place that Broadway had begotten upon Long Island Fishing Village, appalled by its raw vigor that chafed under the old euphemisms and by the too obtrusive fate that herded its inhabitants along a shortcut from nothing to nothing. She saw something awful in the very simplicity she failed to understand. I sat on the front steps with them while they waited for their car. It was dark here in front. Only the bright doors sent 10 square feet of light volleying out on the soft black morning. Sometimes a shadow moved against the dressing room blind above, gave way to another shadow, an indefinite procession of shadows, who rouged and powdered in an invisible glass. Who is this Gatsby anyhow? Demanded Tom suddenly. Some big bootlegger? Where'd you hear that? I inquired. Oh, coming back at you. Magic trick time. I found Great Gatsby. I have it at home. The movie. Hello?
Cue the Scatman music.
You guys pay. Thank you. You get this now or don't get it at all ever. Do you remember last class somebody said, Mr. Edwards, didn't they make a movie about Gatsby? I said they made two. One sucks, but one is very excellent. Like they actually read from the novel. And I said, I'm kicking myself because I left it at school. Well, I swear to God, you can't make this up. The day that school closed, that March 17th was our last day, I grabbed a bag of stuff just in case we didn't get back. I grabbed my Raven. I grabbed one case of DVDs. And I grabbed a smattering of books and a pencil cup. And it's in the basement because I brought everything down to the basement. And it's a little round seat DVD holder with like 10 DVDs in it. And I saw it the other day. And I flipped through every DVD and I said, "Ooh, not Gatsby. Ooh, not Gatsby. Ooh, not Gatsby." And then Gatsby. I have it. We're going to watch The Great Gatsby. Woohoo! Soon. He was silent for a moment. The pebbles of the drive crunched under his feet. This is Tom Buchanan. Well, he certainly must have strained himself to get this menagerie together. A breeze stirred the gray haze of Daisy's fur collar. At least they're more interesting than the people we know, she said with an effort. Hey, class, you know you're rich when you wear a fur collar in August. You didn't look so interested. Well, I was. Tom laughed and turned to me. Did you notice Daisy's face when that girl asked her to put her under a cold shower? Daisy began to sing with the music in a husky, rhythmic whisper, bringing out a meaning in each word that it had never had before and would never have again. When the melody rose, her voice broke up sweetly, following it in a way contralto voices have, and each change tipped out a little of her warm human magic upon the air. Lots of people come who haven't been invited, she said suddenly. That girl hadn't been invited. They simply forced their way in, and he's too polite to object. I'd like to know who he is and what he does, insisted Tom, and I think I'll make a point of finding out. I can tell you right now, he owns some drugstores, a lot of drugstores. He built them up himself. The dilatory limousine came rolling up the drive. Good night, Nick, said Daisy. Her glance left me and sought the lighted top of the steps where 3 o'clock in the morning, a neat, sad little waltz of that year was drifting out the open door. After all, in the very casualness of Gatsby's party, there were romantic possibilities totally absent from her world. There were romantic possibilities totally absent in Daisy's world. I don't know, class. That sounds pretty sad. What was it up there in the song that seemed to be calling her back inside? What would happen now in the dim, incalculable hours? Perhaps some unbelievable guest would arrive, a person infinitely rare and to be marveled at. Some authentically radiant young girl who, with one fresh glance at Gatsby, one moment of magical encounter, would blot out those 5 years of unwavering devotion. I stayed late that night. Gatsby asked me to wait until he was free, and I lingered in the garden until the inevitable swimming party had run up, chilled and exalted from the black beach, until the lights were extinguished in the guest rooms overhead. When he came down the steps at last, the tan skin was drawn unusually tight on his face and his eyes were bright and tired. She didn't like it, Gatsby said immediately. Of course she did. She didn't like it. She didn't have a good time. He was silent, and I guessed at his unutterable depression. This is Gatsby. Up. Here's Gatsby. I feel far away from her, Gatsby said. It's hard to make her understand. You mean about the dance? The dance? He dismissed all the dances he had given with a snap of his fingers. Old sport, the dance is unimportant. He wanted nothing less of Daisy than that she should go to Tom and say, I never loved you. After she had obliterated 3 years with that sentence, 3 years of marriage, they could decide upon the more practical measures to be taken. One of them was that after she was free, they were to go back to Louisville and be married from her house, just as if it were 5 years ago. Oh my God, Mr. Edwards, yes. Are you saying... I think I hear what you're saying. Mr. Edwards, are you saying that Gatsby and his pal Nick are having this very late night conversation, and Gatsby says to Nick, I did all this planning, spent all this money, so Daisy would show up to my party, and she had a bad time. No, she didn't. Yes, she did. You danced 12. It's not about the dance. I need her today, right now, to go to that hulking brute of a husband and say, I don't love you. I never did. 3 years of marriage, waste of time. And Gatsby wants to do something, come on, please. He wants to do something generally considered to be impossible. He wants to go back in time. He wants to start all over again. He wants to go back to Louisville where they first met, and he wants to get married. He wants to go back in time and undo. Come on. Mr. Yep. Yep. And she doesn't understand. She used to be able to understand. We'd sit for hours. He broke off and began to walk up and down a desolate path of fruit rinds and discarded favors and crushed flowers. I wouldn't ask too much of her, Nick ventured. You can't repeat the past. Can't repeat the past? He cried incredulously. Why, of course you can. He looked around him wildly, as if the past were lurking here in the shadow of his house, just out of reach of his hand. I'm gonna fix everything just the way it was before, he said, nodding determinedly. She'll see. He talked a lot about the past, and I gathered that he wanted to recover something, some idea of himself, perhaps, that he had gone into loving Daisy. His life had been confused and disordered since then. But if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it all slowly, he could find out what that thing was. One autumn night 5 years before, they had been walking down the street when the leaves were falling. And they came to a place where there were no trees and the sidewalk was white with moonlight. I'm going to get the context here right. One autumn night, so we're going back, flashback 5 years ago. So this is back to flashback. So what happened 5 years ago? They, Gatsby and Daisy, came to a place where there were no trees and the sidewalk was white with moonlight. They stopped here and turned toward each other. Now it was a cool night with that mysterious excitement in it, which comes at the 2 changes of the year. The quiet lights in the houses were humming out into the darkness, and there was a stir and bustle among the stars. Out of the corner of his eye, Gatsby saw that the blocks of the sidewalk really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. He could climb to it if he climbed alone, and once there could suck on the pap of life, gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder. His heart beat faster and faster as Daisy's white face came up to his own. He knew that when he kissed this girl and forever wed his unutterable visions to her perishable breath, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. So he waited, listening for a moment longer to the tuning fork that had been struck upon a star. Then he kissed her. At his lips' touch, she blossomed for him like a flower, and the incarnation was complete. Through all he said, even through his appalling sentimentality, I was reminded of something, an elusive rhythm, a fragment of lost words that I heard somewhere a long time ago. For a moment, a phrase tried to take shape in my mouth, and my lips parted like a dumb man's, as though there were more struggling upon them than a wisp of startled air. But they made no sound, and what I had almost remembered was uncommunicable forever. There are some things that you just can't put into words. Chapter 7. Whew. Any thoughts? We're well past halfway. Oh, let's mark our page number, please. Natalie?
Yes.
Would you please be class recorder and write down the page number for tomorrow?
Sure.
We're on page 120.
Okay.
Okay, let's review. Oh, I threw away my notes. Brandon, were the 3 people that were presenting today, could they please present tomorrow? Because we got disrupted by that spontaneous eugenics documentary. Who was supposed to present today? Black Lives Matters. All right, it was Alexis, Brandon Lozano.
I'll present.
Huh?
I'm okay with presenting tomorrow.
Who were the 3? Alexis, Brandon.
Me.
Who's me?
It was me, Brandon, Andrew Arsenego.
Okay. Listen. Thank you, Andrew. You guys present tomorrow. Remember, if you don't present, then you have to do 5 to 8 Google slides. Due the last class period that due July 27th. So you got to make a choice because not everybody wants to, number one, not everybody has a microphone. Number 2, maybe you don't want to, maybe you're nervous. If you present, you don't have to, if you present in Google Meet, you don't have to submit slides. I put your name on a piece of paper and it goes into your grade. Now, let's look at Google Classroom. I've been very, very busy, but I know who's working. Now, let's go to Google Classroom. My bad. I don't want any problems when progress reports come out next Friday, or it could be this Friday. I think they're due. Yeah, they're due this week. I think they're due the 16th, which is Thursday. I don't want any problems when progress reports come out, and if you don't get an A, I don't want Mr. Edwards. Where's my A? I'm going to show you now. Chapter 1 notes. 23 turned in out of 32. So if you're one of the 9 that didn't do it, well, then maybe you don't get an A. Chapter 2 notes. 21 out of 32. Chapter 3. 20. See? Chapter 4. 18. See how fewer and fewer people are sliding. More and more people are sliding. Chapter 5. 14. And then poetry terms table, 11. Now, don't you argue with Mr. Edwards, who's got your back. This is due today. What I'm going to do, what I'm going to try to do, because there is no grade book. There is no Aspen. As of today, and I checked Friday, as of this morning, there is no Aspen grade book for you to see, your parents to see, or your teacher to see. Aspen Summer School is not functioning. So plan B, and it's a lot of work for me. Plan B is between, wait, what's wrong? Oh, I didn't mean there. I'm just saying it's a lot of work. I'm happy to do it. Here's plan B. Progress reports, which should come out this Thursday and Friday. I'm going to email every student individually and tell you what I think your grade should be at this time. So, like, Peter, would you really be upset if I spoke about you with great respect and, to use the words of the Raven, with great obeisance? Would that upset you?
Nah.
Peter, progress report for the marking period to date is an A. You have perfect attendance. You ask insightful questions in class discussion. You have 3 out of 5, or I'm just making this up now because I didn't. Peter, did you do chapters 1 through 5 notes?
Yep.
You have completed all chapters 1 through 5 notes. Listen, this is what kills me. How do you get an A for Edwards? Well, there's 3 ways. There's only 3 ways to get an A for Edwards. And I'm not, if I upset you, then we're going to have a serious conversation. You get an A for Edwards by asking. You get an A for Edwards by asking questions that challenge me as a teacher. I'm not going to mention names, but yesterday, even though this student doesn't have perfect attendance, yesterday, a student, she knows who she is. Is she on the yeah, she's on today's meeting. She challenged me yesterday in an email about the difference between metrical and free verse, the concept of what is metrical poetry. And she listen to me carefully. She got me thinking. Because why? Because she was thinking. She says, what is this concept of meter? Okay. She got me thinking about the concept of meter in poetry. I haven't finished that lesson for you. But for example, let me see. I wrote her something back that I thought was, I don't have it. Let me see here. My point is, there was great stimulus of learning. Oh, here's my point. It made me want to go back and reteach the concept of meter to you, because that student was so close to getting it, but needed a little oomph. And we all know who the other student is that challenged me, other than Peter, who challenges me, etc. And I get it. I get you're all challenging me, but please don't take offense, because I try very hard not to be a eugenicist. But Natalie, would you be upset if I said something deeply respectful to you, knowing that the Greek word for respect is obeisance? Yes, no, maybe?
Sure.
My bad, you're fired. It was Alexandra. Alexandra, would you be offended if I said something profound about you? One of you asked me a question going on 3 class periods. Is Gatsby obsessive? And if Gatsby is obsessive, that is not healthy. You're challenging my teaching, my own. Listen. If you hadn't noticed, we do things differently here. If you hadn't noticed. You'll never really understand this, or maybe you will, but not for years to come. I had a class of seniors 10 years ago. No, it was 2015, 16. It was 2014. I had a class 6 years ago of seniors, AP literature, and I taught the same novel every year for 10 years, The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I know it as well as I know Gatsby. It's also a love story, and you and I will read it in the next 2 years. I promise you. It is the greatest love story ever told. And for years, I told students that it was a true romance between a man and a woman who'd been separated by circumstance. And a student in my class, her name was Yvonne, she said, "No, Mr. Edwards, you got it all wrong. He didn't love her." And then she started to go to chapter 19 and showing how he had doubts and how I misread it, how I misread his obligation towards love versus his heart has love. And they convinced me that I was actually misinterpreting, and or they had a better interpretation of the novel. I humbled myself. I thought about it, and I said, "You're right, I'm wrong." I know you, I get, let me say the following, because I care about you all deeply. There's one thing that would bother me, it would keep me up nights if you thought I was playing favorites. As noted, I taught many of your older brothers and sisters. One of you, not Ariana, but one of you, you know, your sister and I are still very close. One of you, you know who you are. You know your older sister, her first letter starts with an N, her last letter starts with a B. I still hang out with her socially. You know, before the pandemic, we'd go out socially. She's well into her 20s now. It's completely appropriate, but I have actually become friends, and many of your older brothers and sisters are still part of my life. I still want to know that they're doing well. I want to hear about their successes. I want to hear about their college accomplishments. Here's my point. It would break my heart if you thought I was playing favorites. I'm not playing in favorites. I'm telling you how to get an A for Edwards. Chapter 1 through 6 does not say take notes like a robot. It says notes and questions. What are your questions? And right now we have like 3 questions on the table that are A material. Is Gatsby's love more obsessive than pure-hearted? That's huge. Because if we have a sick-minded man who has a flawed version of love, that's not who we want to. We don't want to follow that. What exactly is the history of metrical poetry? And that's a huge. I'll give you an example. One of you said this morning that you heard of in 1860s, a young woman writer named Emily Dickinson who was writing during the Civil War in America. Every poem she ever wrote was in meter. Watch this magic trick. Mr. Edwards, where are you going? If you don't know where I'm going by now, of course I'm going to Poetry Foundation. Obviously. What are you going to do when you go to Poetry Foundation? Type in Emily Dickinson. I'm trying to teach you. There she is. Comes right up. Now, there's Emily. Now, this is her biography. Now, here. I have to go to poems. I'll just type in one of her poems. Give me here. This is one of Emily Dickinson's most famous poem. She never titled her poems. Her first line is always her poem title. This is poem number 479. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage, that's the death carriage, held but just ourselves and immortality. Now let's look at this. That poem is one of the greatest poems ever written, and now we have to read it. Alexis, are you there? Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Okay, look. Because I could not stop for death. That's 8 syllables. He kindly stopped for me. That's 6 syllables. A carriage held but just ourselves. That's 8 syllables. And immortality, that's 6 syllables. Now, for the record, we're going to call this tetrameter. You're going to learn all this someday. And then we're going to call this perimeter. These are meters. My bad. Mr. Edwards, what are we actually discussing? We're discussing, by definition, the word metrical or metric. Metrical verse or metrical poetry. Mr. Edwards, what is that? Poetry that can count syllables. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. 8 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, 6 syllables. Do you think the next stanza will repeat exactly that structure or meter? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes, 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 yes. So here's my point. Without exception. Without exception. Everything William Shakespeare ever wrote, and he wrote a lot, was in meter. Highly structured poems where you can always find repetitive patterns, where everything is in a complete logical order. Watch this magic trick. What is the advantage or disadvantage of having a highly structured poem? What's one thing? Let's start simply. What is one reason why poetry would be highly structured? Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. And you need to be memorizing those first 2 stanzas of The Raven. Don't you diss me. Is anybody memorizing The Raven? You think I forget? Watch me. The question is answering itself. Why would you write highly structured poetry? What purpose does it serve? Why not just... Why be so exact with your ingredients? 1 egg, cup of flour. Why not just put in 3 eggs and see what happens?
Perhaps it's because we can remember structures better.
It's 100% right. You have to remember something. And now you're going to learn. Poetry existed before we were able to write it down. Writing, the ability to put pen to paper, now you're going to learn from Mr. Edwards. The oldest poem in the world is the Iliad, otherwise known as the Story of Troy, by Homer, not Simpson. It was written in 725 BC. So, almost 3,000 years ago. The first writing came to Egypt in 610 BC. So over 100 years between the first poem and the first writing. So wait a minute, Mr. Edwards, I'm starting to get this. Are you saying, and I know we had cave drawings, but that was artwork. Are you saying for over 100 years, men in Greece were writing poems and nobody could write them down? Yes. So how do we still have those poems? Because they were memorized and performed and passed on from father to son and teacher to student. And then when writing came, then they wrote them down for the permanent collection. That would be like saying, I have the lyrics and song to my favorite group or band, but I don't have it written down. I memorized them. And then when you write them down, future generations can enjoy the lyrics. So if you live in a culture where there's no writing, but there's still performance and expression, you're telling story, narrative about what's happening, in this case, a war, the Trojan War. How do you keep that story alive from generation to generation before the invention of writing? You memorize it. Well, how do I memorize? By the way, the story of the Trojan War is 24,000 lines long. I counted. The first poem ever written in the Western world, I'm not talking about China and Japan or South America or Aztecs. I'm talking about the Greeks. The first poem written in the Western world was 24,000 lines long. It took 7 days to recite. I'll give you a good insight. The average Shakespearean play is 5,000 lines. It's the equivalent of 5 Shakespearean plays memorized by one person. One person memorized 5 Shakespearean plays. How? Because they also invented structure, meter, rhyme, inner rhyme, alliteration, and the list goes on. They created a system of structure. When you think of meter, think of syllables. When you because I could not watch Mr. Edwards. The reason that I have the ability to retain this poem is because I appreciate and understand its meter. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held just but ourselves and immortality. It has cadence, it flows, it rhymes, it starts to make logical and coherent sense. Peter, you're class leader because you step up your A game every chance you get. Is this starting to make sense? Anybody? We're almost done. It's high noon. Elijah, the question is it starting to make more sense to you, the concept of the literary term meter? Meter is when all the syllables in a poem have a logical order. And the reason that they have a logical order is so the poem can be recited and memorized and everything else in between.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Look at it one more time. We slowly drove. We knew no haste. And the poem's really complicated. It's actually too complicated for a Monday at high noon in July. Here, look. Okay. You stay with me one more minute. Listen. I need you guys to memorize that Raven, and I want it by Friday. Once upon a midnight dreary, while upon a weekend weary, over many quaint and clear his volume of forgotten lore, while I not nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Odd distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, any separate dying ember, waters close upon the floor, eagerly I missed tomorrow, vainly I sought to borrow from my books to cease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost, nor for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name, nor in is here forevermore. That's for the A. Because then you'll get it. Two points on The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. This Friday, that's right. You have 5 days, and I assigned it last week. You have 5 days to memorize 12 lines of poetry. Each line is 16 syllables. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But that's really, that's the, let's call that more, here's what it is. Let's call your ability to recite The Raven without cheating more evidence as to why you deserve an A. See the magic? Mr. Edwards, oh, here's more evidence as to why I deserve an A. Edgar Allan Poe used, see, this is what, see, now you're going to learn something. Edgar Allan Poe was one of the first American writers, and he was writing in, say, he wrote The Raven in 1845. He wasn't writing in the style, look. Emily Dickinson and Edgar Allan Poe are writing in the same decade. They're writing in the 1830s and 1840s. Emily Dickinson is writing in a metered style where she does not exceed 8 syllables per line, and she's writing very easy and very basic and very rhyming poetry. The rhyme is flowing. Listen to the rhyme. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. It's very easy to read that poem because the rhyme and the syllables are very user-friendly. The content is difficult. The concept of a woman dying. See what she says? Because I could not stop for death, he stopped for me. He kindly stopped for me. I was too busy, but death came, the grim reaper. But Poe was writing with great complexity, with inner rhyme. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. Napping, tapping, rapping. It was in the bleak December. I remember there was a dying ember. Poe and Dickinson, you can't say Poe was a better poet than Dickinson or vice versa. They're both immortal. They're both immortal poets. They just have a different approach to poetry. She's using short syllables with sweet rhyme to make a in-your-face point, you can't escape death. He's using the most complicated rhyme ever created, and I was going to say, you're going to learn something here. He went back to Roman odes. He was using styles that were used by Roman poets. He's using an incredibly complicated style that very few people knew about. Most of the style he uses was poems written in Latin. He has far more complicated rhyme. He has rhyme within the line. But you know what's so funny? Each poem in its own way is talking about the inevitability and horrors of dying alone. Both poems are in fact about premature fears of death. But what's different is the point of view and the meter. Okay, here's what I want you to do. And I want to add more work, I really do, but I'm going to pause. I wanted to get a writing sample in today. I had an idea. I wanted you to, like Gatsby has two identities, I wanted you to write a short creative piece of what's your secret identity, like what's your like Gatsby reinvented himself at the age of 17. If you could reinvent yourself, who would you become? Because he did it as a teenager, but that's out there maybe for extra credit or maybe for creative writing down the road. You have plenty to do right now. Pay attention. You're supposed to be spending 40 minutes in the evening reading your Black Lives Matter self-independent reading. You should squirrel away somewhere privately and safe and read for 40 minutes. Even if you don't finish, you will get your foot in the door. Keep the Black Lives Matter conversation going. Number two, you've been reminded 3 times that you have to memorize 12 lines of a complicated poetry. And don't give me no song and dance that it's too hard or you just don't have the right stuff and you suck at memorizing. I did it when I was younger than you. I did it when I was 15, so I did it when I was your age. And number 3, you have your notes in anything that you're still missing for Google Classroom. I hope you enjoyed today's class. Are there any questions? Alexis, your class announcer, how are we doing?
We're doing good.
I mean, we don't suck. Don't tell me we suck. I can't do that. We have to either be awesome or incredibly awesome. I don't do, right? Got it? You all have a wonderful afternoon. Email me on the side if you have questions. I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Okay? Chapter 8, Gatsby. A very painful chapter, okay? All right, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Bye. You guys got to hang up. I'm supposed to be the last one to hang up. You have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. I'm supposed to be the last one to hang up. All right, fellas, goodbye.